the global condemnation of UK governance. A wave of intense international criticism has targeted the current state of British leadership, with Joe Rogan, arguably the most significant voice in modern global media, now branding the United Kingdom an established dictatorship. This characterization centers on a perceived collapse of democratic norms under Keir Starmer's administration. Rogan's public intervention has focused on the staggering rise of state-led censorship, specifically highlighting the approximately 12,000 arrests made in relation to social media posts. The comparison being drawn is no longer with Western allies, but with authoritarian regimes like North Korea, as critics argue that the UK has prioritised policing speech over public safety. Surging crime and the crisis of public safety, the critique extends beyond civil liberties to a stark assessment of the country's domestic security. Statistics cited in this debate paint a harrowing picture of daily life, alleging that knife attacks occur every 10 minutes and sexual offences take place every 7 minutes. These figures are being used to argue that the government has lost control of the streets, while simultaneously over-policing the digital lives of its citizens. The contrast between these violent crime rates and the thousands of arrests for online commentary has become a central pillar of the argument that the UK's priorities have fundamentally shifted away from protecting its people. A turning point for the Starmer administration. The sudden and forceful breaking of silence from global figures like Rogan has intensified the pressure on Keir Starmer, leading to renewed questions about his future as Prime Minister. The narrative suggests that this international exposure has stripped away the government's ability to manage its image, leaving Starmer isolated and facing calls for his resignation. By ranking Britain alongside the world's most restrictive nations, this discourse frames the current political situation not just as a temporary scandal, but as a terminal crisis for a government accused of abandoning both safety and freedom.
Yeah. You're seeing it now in England where people are getting arrested for tweets.
Yeah. Well,
England, people talk about Soviet Russia, like how bad Russia is in terms of cracking down on thought police and cracking down on bad tweets and things like that. I think the statistics are, I think England I think there's something like 4,000 people have been arrested in England for thought crime.
The rapid decline of domestic and international standing. Keir Starmer's domestic popularity is in freefall, with regional approval ratings reportedly crashing by 2.6% in just a 6-hour window. While some may dismiss American commentators like Joe Rogan as mere entertainers, critics caution that his influence on US foreign policy is substantial, often exerted through a single social media post. Rogan serves as a direct conduit to Donald Trump, and for this circle, Starmer represents the quintessential leftist globalist. Consequently, Rogan's public condemnations are viewed as having potentially fatal consequences for the current UK administration's relationship with its most important ally. Economic threats and targeted tariffs. The diplomatic friction has already manifested in severe economic threats from the Trump administration. Donald Trump has signalled a willingness to impose aggressive trade barriers, including a proposed 20% levy on the British pharmaceutical industry. Furthermore, iconic British automotive brands such as Bentley and Range Rover face the prospect of devastating new taxes. Financial experts warn that such a targeted trade war could strip the British economy of £22 billion in revenue, posing an existential threat to key industrial sectors that rely heavily on the American market. The critique of local leadership. The narrative of national decline extends to the capital, where the leadership of London has come under direct fire from Trump. Describing the current situation as a disaster, he has labelled the city's leadership as terrible, linking the perceived failures of the mayor to a broader pattern of mismanagement. This criticism frames the struggle of the Starmer government not just as a failure of national policy, but as a systemic collapse of order within Britain's major institutions and urban centres.
And it's been so changed. Now they want to go to Sharia law, but you're in a different country. You can't do that. Both the immigration and their suicidal energy ideas will.
Keir Starmer's administration is significantly escalating its domestic policies, moving forward with a mandatory digital ID system for all adults. Under this new plan, possessing a digital ID stored securely on smartphones will be a legal requirement for anyone seeking to work within the United Kingdom. While the Prime Minister argues these measures are essential for restoring order and curbing illegal employment, high-profile critics like Joe Rogan have reacted with intense anger, characterising the move as a transition into a totalitarian state. Simultaneously, civil liberty advocates warn that the system grants the government unprecedented control over the British populace. The tension has reached a global scale, with Elon Musk joining figures like Donald Trump and Joe Rogan in criticising the UK's trajectory. Musk has made the stark prediction that civil war in Britain is inevitable, pointing to a legal climate where citizens can face up to 3 years in prison for social media posts deemed to incite hatred. This environment is underscored by the creation of dedicated police units that have reportedly conducted 12,000 arrests for online communications in a single year. In response, Starmer has challenged tech giants like X, formerly Twitter, and Google, threatening fines of up to 10% of their global revenue, potentially totaling $30 billion if they fail to comply with the UK's Online Safety Act.
Particularly in places that don't have free speech,
Yes.
right? Like England, we've
where they lock
about it.
people up for memes and stuff. Literally. Yeah.
12,000 people this year.
12,000?
12,000. 12,000 arrests for social media posts.
I mean, yeah, some of
Crazy.
these things you read about it, and it's like literally, it's someone had a meme on their phone that they didn't even send to anyone,
Right.
and they're like in prison for that.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a case in Germany where a woman got a longer sentence than the guy that raped her because of something she said on a group chat.
Wow. Was it an immigrant who raped her?
Yes.
Yeah. It was his culture.
Yeah.
He didn't know. He didn't know better.
Yes, I think she said something, not like was critical of his culture, and she got a longer sentence than the guy who raped her in Germany.
The UK,
So,
Europe,
and
Germany, England thing seems so insane.
It
that
is
it's
totally insane. I actually didn't realize it was like such a huge number of people that got
12,000. Yeah, far above Russia, far above China,
right.
far above anywhere on earth. UK is number one.
Well, things I actually, I talked to friends of mine in England, and I was like, hey, aren't you worried about this? Like, shouldn't you be protesting more? And I mean, the problem is that like the legacy mainstream media doesn't cover the stuff. They're like, oh, everything's fine, you
Right.
know?
Most people aren't even aware of it until they come knocking on your door.
Yeah, until like so. I mean, these like lovely sort of small towns in England, Scotland, Ireland. They've been like sort of living their lives quietly. They're like hobbits, frankly. So it's in fact, J.R.R. Tolkien based the hobbits on people he knew in small town England. Because they were just like lovely people who like to, smoke their pipe and have nice meals, and everything's pleasant. The hobbits in the Shire. The Shire, he was talking about, places like Hertfordshire. Like the Shire is around in the Greater London area, Oxfordshire type of thing. The reason they've been able to enjoy the Shire is because hard men have protected them from the dangers of the world. And but since they have almost no exposure to the dangers of the world, they don't realize that they're there until one day, 1,000 people show up in your village of 500 out of nowhere and rape and start raping the kids. This has now happened God knows how many times in Britain.
On the streets, public safety remains a critical concern, with reports of over 210,000 sexual offences occurring in a year. Critics argue that while the state is aggressive in policing speech, it has failed to dismantle the grooming gangs that continue to operate in many towns. Rogan has specifically highlighted the vulnerability of women, noting that the UK's strict self-defence laws categorise tools like pepper spray as illegal firearms carrying the same mandatory prison sentences as revolvers. This legal framework, combined with a lack of castle doctrine for homeowners, has led to a situation where over 50% of burglaries reportedly occur while residents are inside, leaving families feeling legally defenseless against intruders.
But it just doesn't seem like that would be anything that any rational society would go along with. That's what makes me so confused. It's like you're importing massive numbers of people that come from some really dark places of the world.
Finally, the migration crisis is being framed by critics as a total surrender of national sovereignty. While the US administration under Donald Trump has touted over 600,000 deportations as a model of border efficiency, the UK government is accused of being paralysed by legal challenges and human rights frameworks. With an estimated £21 billion being spent annually on the migration crisis, including £6 million a day on hotel accommodations, diplomatic relations with the US have cooled significantly. Reports suggest that President-elect Trump has postponed a state visit to London, citing concerns over high street crime and property theft, signalling a major pivot in the special relationship toward a more transactional and security-focused alliance.